Well, welcome everybody to the Chileska webinar titled The Challenge of Communicating Cyber Risk for Business, How to Resolve Technical Security Issues into Understandable Business Risk. In this webinar, we will describe how cybersecurity is, at the end of the day, a business problem. Companies and organizations have many business risks, and cybersecurity is one of those. However, it is a very important one that has the potential to massively affect the business bottom line. However, in cybersecurity, the industry has a lot more focus applied to the technical side, the ability to find those technical issues and apply fixes, with less focus given to the business case for cybersecurity. That's why in this webinar, we're going to focus on topics such as what issues exist on the business understanding side of cybersecurity, how can we measure cyber risk, and what affects the priority of cyber issues from a business point of view. Along with that, we'll cover what is cyber value at risk and how can we automate it. Now, my name is Gary Robinson, and I'll be your presenter today. I'm the founder and CEO of Uleska, a software security company based in Belfast who develops security, automation, orchestration, and cyber value at risk reporting tools for the software and IT industries. Outside of Uleska, I'm also a global board member of the organization called OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, which is a worldwide non-profit organization that advises and communicates web security to governments, regulators, enterprises, and the general IT industry. I myself have worked in software and cybersecurity for over 20 years. I've been a CISSP for the last 5, and I've been a security architect at some of the world's largest enterprise banks. Let's first talk about how cybersecurity is a business problem. Generally, security teams within organizations have two main focuses. The first focus is the classic technical challenge. How can we find all those technical security bugs, hacks, and issues in our software and plug those issues before we're hacked? These tasks are usually handled by tooling or very technical and highly skilled people who are focused on finding the issues. I've worked as a penetration tester and security tester on many systems in the past, and I've both found these issues and created these technical reports. The second aspect is what we call business translation, where a team or managers that take these technical issues have to work out the risk to the business of each of those issues. Now, these risk managers will likely have many more issues to cover than the techies, as the risk managers will be typically across tens or hundreds of applications or systems. And part of this task is then to involve communication of this risk to the board or higher management. And this is in terms of cyber and in terms of business risk, which can't be done through talking about XSSs or command injections. Instead, many certifications such as CISSP and CISM will talk entirely about risk, likelihoods, and things like rates of occurrence. And what we find is many organizations is that a lot of these things can be lost in translation between the technical and the business sides. Never mind the extra time needed after the security issues are found in triage to perform these risk translations. Because the business is focused on what allows cybersecurity operators to work effectively. It's no secret that there is no organization in the world that can afford the time and the budget to fix every security issue their fast-paced teams, IT teams, are faced with. Therefore, effective understanding of the business risk and prioritization is key. Now let's look at what can happen when you get it wrong. Now, we don't mean to pick on these companies. They have been unfortunate enough to be considered poster child examples of cybersecurity issues, and thus we simply use them to aid the communications of these topics. Firstly, let's talk about the TalkTalk hack. This is reported to have cost the company £80 million and over 100,000 subscribers. Now, something to keep in mind is that this is a result of just one issue in their systems, just one. Now, in the case of TalkTalk, we don't know if they knew about the bug at the time of breach, or if they had the issue on their list of issues to fix and simply didn't get around to it in time. But despite the many articles to the contrary, TalkTalk would have had a very active cybersecurity program. and would have been finding and fixing many cybersecurity issues. It just happened that the one that really hurt them either wasn't found or wasn't addressed in time. Secondly, we have the Equifax hack. This time it has been reported that Equifax knew of the security issue and had time to fix it. Again, this was just one security issue that caused all this damage. However, they didn't get around to fixing it in time. And it's not as if the Equifax security teams were deliberately doing nothing in the interim. It's perhaps that they didn't understand the risk and therefore priority of the issue. Otherwise, they could have stayed out of the headlines. So the challenge for CISOs and security managers is traversing this awkward and somewhat new world between the technical security departments and the board or top management. There are some surveys that communicate this challenge. However, there's a good article by Matthew in the link shown in this slide that states for the challenges for CISOs, such as things like they could not communicate risks well and demanded significant budget increases every year, yet the organization didn't show a consummate benefit. Now, these challenges are not surprising when, on one hand, you're dealing with highly technical security bugs, and on the other hand, you're dealing with budgets, financial risks, business leaders who want to know what you're doing about the risk, not what an XML injection is. If this fact to ability to communicate benefit of security is typically and especially important. In cybersecurity, there's an element of trying to prove a negative. For example, you've given us £1 million budget and nothing has happened. That's a good situation. You haven't been hacked. However, showing the value that security teams can bring to an organization helps them understand the other benefits they bring to the overall organization. Let's focus on how these issues manifest themselves during the operation of a security team. Firstly, we have the technical task. Finding as many of those technical cybersecurity issues as they can within the budget and time frame available. Secondly, once you have all those technical issues, then a CISO or management has to understand the business risk to those issues. Remember that, as we show on the left-hand side of this slide, no organization can throw infinite time and budget at cybersecurity. Every department or team in a company should be adding value. And any company spending more on cybersecurity than the value it brings will run the risk of running out of business. So thirdly, you have to know the business impacts of these cybersecurity issues, and you need to identify those top priorities, those business ending risks, and make sure they're mitigated first. For example, if you have 10,000 issues to sort through and no effective priorities, then of course you run the massive risk of fixing and handling low risk issues first and leaving those bigger issues till later than you should. Perhaps this is what happened to Equifax when they got breached. They knew about the issue, but were perhaps spending time fixing other less relevant issues and not the £450 million issue that hit them. Now let's talk about how the cybersecurity industry can measure risk. So I've been in the cybersecurity industry for a long time, used many tools and worked on many security and penetration tests from various teams and various vendors. The typical, and hopefully this is the older way to represent risk, is the simple critical high, medium, low type rating system. Now, obviously this allows you to differentiate between the high issue and the low issue. However, it's got some major issues itself. Often the severity issue of the issue here is purely based on the technicality of the bug and nothing else. So for example, all SQL injections will be listed with the same severity. As we'll show you later, not all issues with the same technical cause will have the same business risk, but we'll come back to that later. Another issue is the lack of granularity. So for example, of the 20 high risk issues, is there one or two that could put us out of business? What is the cost of the risk? Is it £1 million or £1,000? Surely this relates to the company vision. Let's take a risk of £100,000. For a small startup or small business, that's a very major issue, something that could well end the business. However, for an enterprise bank, this would be an acceptable risk or a rounding error, and likely maybe not the most serious potential issue that that bank has found that week. The current best practice in the industry is something called CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, currently at version 3. This system is used in CWEs and many penetration test reports and ranges from 0.0 all the way up to 10, giving you 100 levels of granularity to differentiate between the issues being found. What's better is that it doesn't just rely on the technical issue that was found. Instead, it includes aspects of the environment of the application or system, how easy the security bug is to reproduce, and what effect it can have on the data. So, for example, if it's a bug that's available to anyone on the internet without authentication, that's going to be taken into account. Also, if it can delete data or cause a denial of service, that can also be taken into account. There's online calculators, such as the first.org calculator, whose link is listed at the bottom of this slide, that can be used to calculate the CVSS score of a security bug. So as we see here, CVSS is taking a first step into combining the technical nature of the security issue with the system environment and effects that it impacts, and turning that into a risk scoring. This is a big improvement on the simple high, medium, low risk scoring we saw before. However, CVSS is still typically scored manually, by which would mean someone has to understand the technical issue, open up the calculator, enter the details, and record the score. That person also tends to need to be a skilled cybersecurity person to aid the translation into CVSS. Also, CVSS doesn't take into account some things such as business risk. There's still nothing here that takes into account the size of the organization running the system, the size of the data that could be affected, or the chances of this issue occurring within a year. These things are usually inputted into business risk calculations. So the most recent methodology to determine cyber value at risk is from the FAIR Institute, which has an explicit methodology to convert any technical security issue directly into monetary dollar or pound value to represent the risk that that technical issue poses. The FAIR Institute itself comprises of over 4,200 members, many from Fortune 100 companies, and best of all, it's open source, meaning anyone can investigate and adopt it into their risk management. Their methodology incorporates the same information as CVSS, including the technical issue, environment of the system, and the effect on the data. But it also includes things like the likelihood of exploitation, mapping the difficulty of the user base to the difficulty of the issue, the size of the company, and the regulatory environment that the company operates in. It allows a standardized way for technical security issues to be communicated as financial risk, which provides much more granularity, but also allows business and management to quickly understand the potential bottom line impact of an issue, implicitly then providing that prioritization for the risk organization, because obviously a £1,000 risk is more important than a £500 risk. This methodology is flexible and can be used for any technical security issue, from flaws in a chip to access keys to enter a computer room, and as we use it as Uleska, automatically mapping technical application security issues found manually by or automatically by security tools into monetary impacts. To see how cyber value at risk can be useful to better communicate and measure security risk, let's look at a few examples of how not all cyber issues are created equally. This is an example of one technical issue, an SQL injection, which, according to OWASP, is still the most common security flaw, despite it being known about for over 20 years. In this slide, we have 4 issues, all of which are the same technical aspect, same technical issue, an SQL injection. However, each of these 4 issues have different environments, different data, and different types of companies. For example, number 1 there on the left-hand side, we have a startup with public data and only 10 unskilled users. Now, what would be the impact of an SQL injection being exploited for those companies? Is it going to be £420 million or somewhat closer to £1,000? There's not attractive data here. There's only 10 users who probably haven't heard of SQL injections, so the risk of exploitation is a lot lower. Then we look at example number 2. This time we're in a bigger company, but a better protected systems, and still no really sensitive or data or functionality. Still isn't much of an impact. Plus, in example number 2, we have a better protected system with two-factor authentications and it being an internal system. So therefore, the simple likelihood of this issue being breached is a lot more reduced. Then let's skip to example number 4. Here we have a large company, highly regulated, so there's going to be fines if it's breached, sensitive and attractive data to breach, and a non-authenticated interface. This scenario is what happened in TalkTalk and cost £80 million. Here, the technical issue is still a single SQL injection, but the factors of data sensitivity, access to the system, size of the company, and regulatory environment, along with the size of data, greatly affects the monetary impact of that SQL injection. And this example of monetary impact can be shown along with the technicality and regulatory information in portal and report outputs, such as shown in this slide. Having the business impact of technical security issues quickly understood allows them to be automatically prioritized, allowing you to know which issues represent the risk you simply can't take. For example, if this report was shown to an enterprise bank, then the command injection or privacy violation might represent a risk they would want to fix sometime soon. Similarly, if the same report was given to a micro business, it could show that everything, including the £5,000 portability flaw, needs to be addressed because they are risks that the company simply cannot afford in their portfolio. So the great thing about monetary cyber value risk is the representation allows the meaning of the risk to be self-evident to whatever business is, be it large or small. And when these cyber value at risk calculations are configurable by the organization, they further allow the monetary risk to be specific to them and the size of their company. Let's give you an overview of how cyber value at risk can be automated so you understand the monetary risk to your business as soon as you find the technical issues. Cyber value at risk through a methodology such as FAIR is a process that requires inputs, the process itself, and then gives you the monetary output risk. Now, we estimate a security manager could churn out cyber value at risk for around 2 applications or systems per week, using such a methodology and hooking up certain spreadsheets where they can. However, when you fully automate cyber value risk, such as Uleska has done, then you can know the cyber value risk as soon as you find the technical issue. What's more, you can easily and repeatedly calculate the cyber value risk every time a rescan or retest is done, meaning you can quickly understand how the risk of an application or system is getting better or worse, using understandable monetary values, which makes sense to the business. This both increases the communication of the technical and business sides of the organization and shows trends over time where actions of the security organization is showing value. For example, if in week 10, the accumulated value at risk for a whole team and all issues and all applications within that team is, say, £10 million, and then in week 11 is now dropped down to £9 million, then the security teams are showing their value in the fixes they're applying and their methodologies. Similarly, if then in week 12, it rises up to £15 million, then the organization can show how new security flaws are causing real risk to the business. As I mentioned, the process of cyber value at risk requires you to have the inputs, the process itself, and these are terms in which Uleska has automated in its product. Those inputs include information about the system and company, information about the data, and the technical issue itself. Hence, our first cog here, we have a one-time setup. When an application or system is onboarded to the system, which sets the interface of the system and the environment for the company. This is a few configurable drop-down boxes and takes only 1 or 2 minutes to run as a one-time first onboarding task. Then when a system is analyzed, which is our second cog in this slide, this can be done either from code scan or a spider scan. Data types, their location, such as URLs and APIs, can be extracted and understood by a system. Again, this can be a one-time setup task, or it's even better if it's automated through a product such as ours to understand the attack surface of the application. And then in the third cog, we have our static or dynamic or manual security tests. When they're fed into our system, this forms the last piece of input needed for the system to move on to the fourth cog, which automatically and quickly determines the monetary risk from that issue against this data, the system, the application, and the company. Now, the details of how that translation is done is quite involved and quite technical. However, if you would like to know more about how that is done, just contact us at Uleska and we'll take you through a more detailed demo. Lastly, the last cog can simply take all of the issues from one application or system, add the cyber value at risk numbers together, and tell you what the overall risk is from that system. If you fix one of those issues, then of course the cyber value at risk from that issue goes away, and you've communicated that the value added by the cybersecurity organization and the value of that fix. Moreover, when the cyber value at risk numbers from all applications, teams, etc. are communicated or accumulated, then you can easily view the risk for the whole organization or break it back down into teams, business units, regions, or whatever, allowing you to compare and contrast how different teams and different regions are performing against your security policy. This even lets you understand where to invest cybersecurity training or tools or practices, as you'll see what aspects of security are causing you the biggest risk. In this way, automated cyber value at risk is going beyond the communication of security and displaying the value added into giving you actionable, evidence-based data on how you can go about reducing your cyber value at risk. As you implement those measures to reduce your risk, these cyber value at risk reports will continue to be calculated and displayed, allowing you to again communicate the effectiveness and return on value of those cyber value at risk measures you're taking. And so to our takeaways. As we say, no organization has the skills and budget to cover absolutely everything in cybersecurity. It is all about prioritization and making sure you're able to address the business ending risks upfront. This requires quick and understandable evaluation of business risk and something you can't delay on. So our first takeaway is communication of business risk. Understanding the technical issues. We have 352 cross-site scripting issues. That's only part of the story. It's understanding the business risk that actually allows you to operate as a more well-rounded cybersecurity department. Quick translation allows you to understand that business risk in a timely manner. As we've seen with the Equifax hack, they did have time to fix it, but we are talking about days here. We're talking about 5 to 10 days, whereas the average we see sometimes in the industry is around 2 months from understanding the technical issue to understanding the risk with those technical issues. Effective prioritization is so important. Understanding which risk is going to cost you £450 million and which risk is going to cost you £500 allows you to work out which ones you need to spend the time on to be able to reduce the risk to the overall organization. This is not a once a year operation. This is something that needs to be done continually throughout the life cycle of the either SDLC or the IT department, because things are moving so much faster than once a year. And identifying trends allows you to actually focus your cybersecurity programs. If you are having continual problems with one particular type of cybersecurity issue, you can apply training, you can apply programs to try and address that there. If you're having issues with one particular team or one particular region, again, identifying those patterns and addressing it allows you to reduce the risk of your systems. And with that, we'll thank you for your time. We'll thank you for your attention. This is a recording of this webinar, hence we are not going to repeat the questions that were asked during the live show of the webinar. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us over Twitter or over email, and we will contact you shortly. Thank you very much.